Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here with my video for the results of my judging of round one of the 2020 BookTube prize. Woo! So I was judging nonfiction this time around. I was super excited that there was a nonfiction prize at all in 2020. I am really excited that we've added this category to the BookTube prize. And I was super excited to start off my judging for 2020 with the nonfiction. And I was in group, let me just check my list here. Group F was my group. So this video, you're going to see clips of me discussing my reactions to each of the books as I read them. Minus the two books that I'm going to talk about right now, because these two books I read before the BookTube prize list, short list was announced. So, or I should say the BookTube prize long list was announced back in January. So I had already read these books, and so I'll just briefly discuss them here. And I will say that my group was an extremely strong group of books. So, you'll see, but it was a strong group of books. Let's just say that. So the first book that I read out of my group was The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming by David Wallace Wells. This book is all about climate change, and it's all about what we can expect the world to look like. And he sort of doesn't take a super long view. This is within, my lifetime, your lifetime, things that we can expect to change. And he details all the different troubles that await us because of the warming of the earth. And some of these, everybody thinks about sea level rise and weather events, but there's other things that we should think of. And he has chapters on heat death, hunger, drowning, wildfires, freshwater issues, dying oceans, unbreathable air, economic collapse, and conflicts like wars caused by changing climate. All of this through the lens of politics and governing and what it means for you in your day-to-day life. This book is, yes, it's scary, but it's also, he talks about things that we know are going to happen and also like what the worst case scenario could be, but there's no way to avoid some of the changes that are going to happen. And so he deals with these sort of straight on in a head on manner, and just, we all need to just wake up to the reality of what, is coming and is already here in a lot of cases. And I thought this was actually, I like to know the facts about any issue that comes up, and I would rather be cognizant of the reality of the world rather than bury my head in the sand about some of these kinds of things. So I think this is a really great book. I actually gave this 4 stars, and it didn't send me into a panic. I'll just say that. I just found it very informative and super wake up and smell the coffee kind of thing. This is what's happening in the world today. So highly recommend that one. I also in January read Midnight in Chernobyl by Adam Higginbotham. This is the untold story of the world's greatest nuclear disaster. So I had read Voices from Chernobyl by Svetlana Alexievich last fall. And then this book, won prizes and was being discussed all over the place. And so I got this book for Christmas and was really excited to read it. Picked it up in January, and it is very, very good. It reads, it's narrative nonfiction, so it reads much more like a novel. It is very compulsively readable. It details what happened on the ground in Chernobyl when the nuclear facility there melted down, and what the work is within the nuclear facility were asked to do, and what happened, what the government did, what the people who lived in the surrounding community did and were asked to do. And it just shows how a government like the Soviet Union could at the time bury what was happening, basically, and deny what was happening, and just allow people to die so that it wasn't shown to be the problem that it was. Sound familiar? Yeah. Let's not go there. This was just really engrossing read. I really learned a lot, and this was really good, giving me the big picture of sort of how a government handles a disaster like this, and then how the people on the ground, the regular day-to-day people, are expected to deal with those government decisions. And it was fascinating and horrifying all at the same time. I also gave this one 4 stars. This one is written in a very highly readable style. The only thing that was troublesome to me in this is the Russian names, because I'm just terrible at remembering people's names at the best of times, and Russian names I'm really, really terrible at. So excellent, excellent nonfiction. Again, highly recommend this. So that, I read those 2 books, and now you're going to see clips of the next 4 books that I read for the BookTube Prize Group F Nonfiction. So I finished this book for the BookTube Prize. This is Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe, a true story of murder and memory in Northern Ireland. This is the 3rd book I've read for round 1 of the BookTube Prize judging, and as you can see from the shiny cover, I got it from the library, so it needs to go back, and I wanted to film some of my thoughts about it before I took it back, in anticipation, you know, of getting to the end of the judging round and posting a video. So this is really, really great narrative nonfiction. I knew very little about the time period known as the Troubles in Ireland, which was like the 70s on, the 1970s on is when this particular history takes place. And it's framed around one particular story of a mother of 10 children who one night is disappeared from her family. Some people, masked people, come into their apartment, take the mother, and leave with her, and the children never know what happened to her. And so we start with that story and then branch out into describing, basically this tells the story of the Catholic side of the conflict. These are the Republicans, the IRA, specifically a branch of the IRA called the Provos, and their activities during the 70s, 80s, 90s in Ireland to try to gain basically Irish freedom from British rule. And of course, the Catholics were the minority, still are the minority in Northern Ireland at that time, and so these people believed that only through violent conflict could they achieve their goal of a free Ireland, and equality for, you know, their particular group of people. It was really eye-opening to me to read this book, and Keefe really tells the story in a really fantastic way. He comes at it from the eyes of not only the Republican side of the argument, but also we see some of the British players in all of this, the military people, the political leadership, and how much not just on the British side, but on the Irish side, the personalities of those involved really influenced where this conflict went. So we follow from the early 1970s, and I think this ends pretty much present day with you know, some of the repercussions of what had happened in the 70s and 80s, the violence that had happened in the 70s and 80s, and trying to come to terms with that. This is a really fantastic narrative nonfiction. I know this looks like a chunky book, but it's certainly a book that reads quickly. It's very action-packed. There's a lot of interesting personalities. Not only do we have this mother, Jean McConville, story to tell, there were 2 young women who were very instrumental in the Provos in the early 70s. We followed their stories, their participation in the rebellion, some of the leadership of the of the IRA, and we follow their stories. So definitely an excellent book. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. So it's going to be tough for anything that I read to beat this book, but I still have a lot of really great books to go, so we'll see. I finished How We Fight for Our Lives by Saeed Jones, which is a memoir, coming-of-age memoir by a black, gay, Southern man. He grew up in Texas. He's a poet, and so the writing is very lyrical in this book. He's an excellent writer. And it really explores what it's like, to basically have two strikes against you in terms of prejudice in America. He's born in Texas, he's black, he figures out he's gay at a fairly young age. He's being raised by a single mom, so, all of this stuff on top of it. And we follow him throughout his childhood, his adolescence, and into college, and then after he gets out of college and starts his career as a teacher and a writer. And it was really, really well done, very well written. I really enjoyed it. I listened to it on audiobook, which he reads himself, and he imbues a lot of emotion into his voice, which always adds to a memoir. So I definitely would recommend it as an audiobook. I think I would give this book a 4-star. It wasn't perfect for me. It gets really, really graphic, especially when he's in college and he's talking about his sexual awakening and, how he figures out for himself what he wants out of a relationship beyond just the gratification of a sexual experience. And some of that is really hard. It was really hard to listen to, and I would assume it would be really hard to read as well. So, I would, just warn you, if you're a person that doesn't like explicit sex, that this would be a difficult read for you. The other thing that I particularly loved about this book was how he described his relationship with his mother, which is, they have their difficulties with each other, but is really a strong relationship and really is his anchor throughout his growing up as he tries to, come to terms with everything that he has to deal with and figure out where he wants to go in his life. That part really, really spoke to me. I thought it was amazing. So yeah, really good book. I think my group in particular is really tough because I've now read that was the 4th book I've read in my group, and so far they're all 4 stars. So yeah, this is going to be a difficult one. I finished Everything in Its Place, First Loves and Last Tales by Oliver Sacks. This is a collection of essays and articles written by Oliver Sacks that evidently were never, I don't think they were all unpublished. They might have been published in magazines or newspapers or whatever, but they weren't, sorry, there's a little bit of a glare on that because it's a library copy. But they were never pulled together and published in one volume. So this collection of essays and articles was not very successful for me. This is the first dud in my group for me for this round of the BookTube prize. And it's too bad because I read The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat a few years ago and really enjoyed that book. But this one's all over the place. This isn't just him talking about his work with neurology and brain conditions and different things in the medical field. This is him ruminating on everything from swimming to reading to, how the world's going to hell because everybody's looking at their phones all the time and they don't make large print books anymore, it's all over the place. And even his articles about sort of neurological disorders and Tourette's and all that stuff that, he's kind of known for just felt like retreads of information that I've heard him talk about before. So overall, I can't recommend this one. I know this one's not going to be in my top 3. This right now is the worst book that I read so far in my group. So that's too bad, but somebody's got to be number 6, right? So that's where this one's going to go, I think. unless the last book I have to read is really surprising. I finished my last BookTube prize book. This is The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, Native America from 1890 to the Present by David Truer. And this was fabulous. Like, let's not beat around the bush. This was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved it. It is a history nonfiction, obviously, as it says on the tin, but it also mixes in with the historical record of what happened to Native Americans from the period of European colonization of North America all the way through to the present day. It mixes in with that, basically people's stories, individual Native American stories, not only just the author's stories, but people that he meets and talks with, different members of his family, and those stories are used to illustrate different points. And basically the author's point is Native Americans did not cease to exist after Cutler's Last Stand, that Native Americans were not then and have never been sort of wiped out, right? They have existed, they have persevered, they have been able to maintain their cultures, and they are thriving. In many cases, there's greater numbers of Native Americans today than there were in the late 1800s in different, I mean, that certainly isn't the case in all tribal communities, but it is the case in several communities that he identifies and discusses how these tribal communities have been able to be successful in the face of all of the different methodologies that the U.S. government put into place to basically try to eradicate their cultures. And it was fascinating. His voice is really, really excellent. It's a lot of information, but I felt like it moved along really quickly. I was really engaged throughout. I learned things that I did not know, and I have read many different books on the topic of Native American history, and I even took a class in college, which was a horrible class. Like, let's not even get into that. But this book, taught me a lot, especially because it addresses basically the modern Native American in the United States today. And I think that's a story that isn't told as often. And I think it's really important for us to understand that these cultures still exist today and are still thriving today. And the ways in which tribal communities have been able to take the programs and the constrictions that are put in place by the U.S. government and use those to their advantage. Really, really great read. Can't recommend this one highly enough. This is excellent, popular historical nonfiction. Okay, now let's discuss how I ranked those books. As you can see, I had the pleasure of really, really loving most of the books that I read. There was only one book in my whole group that didn't work for me. And so that made my ranking extremely difficult because I had basically one book that was definitely going to be the least. I only gave it 2 stars. Then I had a bunch of 4 stars, and then I had a 5 star. So my very bottom and my very top, I could figure out. But then it was how everything else fell in the middle because they were all really great books. And so it was with very heavy heart that I sent in my my rankings to Robert, because there were books on there that I had to put under, 3, 2, and 1 that were good books, and I feel sad about that. But I mean, what can you do? You can only give 3 books the top 3 rankings, so that's what I did. So let's go through my rankings. At the very, very bottom, I had Everything in Its Place by Oliver Sacks. That book just was a disappointment. And then in position number 5, I had The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells. Excellent book. I ranked that book 4 stars. It is an excellent, excellent book, and I don't want you to think that because it's in the 5th position that it's bad. It is not bad, but I had to do it this way. Then next in position number 4, I had How We Fight for Our Lives by Saeed Jones. And again, I ranked this book 4 stars. It is an excellent book, especially on audio. It is very emotionally impactful. But the top 3 books, they were just to me, they were better, a little bit better. It wasn't that my 4 and my 5 were bad. It's just that the others were just a slightly bit better. So in spot number 3 was Midnight in Chernobyl by Adam Higginbotham. Just such a good book, such a compelling read. It was engrossing. It was enraging. It was just another example of how governments can do the wrong thing and what happens to people, real people, when governments do the wrong thing. Really just bowled me over, I guess is the right way to put that. And then in spot number 2 was Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. I ranked that one 4.5 stars. That book, again, narrative nonfiction about the Troubles in Ireland, and what a read, man. That one was a roller coaster. I didn't know very much about the Troubles before I began reading that book, and I didn't even think that it was an issue that I was particularly interested in, but that book just, that one just swept me along. I couldn't put the book down. It was very excellently written, really, really good nonfiction book. And then in my top spot, The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee by David Truer. That book is amazing. 5-star read for me. I mean, what a combination of historical nonfiction and memoir and people's stories. Actual Native Americans living their lives in today's society, and how they have kept their culture and kept their individualism in the face of a government that's trying to wipe them and their community out. I loved that book. I loved that book so much. I cried at different parts. It's the best of nonfiction for me. It's just a premier example of what the best nonfiction can be. And so I would very much love it if you would actually go buy that book and read it, because I think it's so, so important. It's such a wonderful read. So that is nonfiction group F for the first round. I'm super excited to get started for the next round of judging. I will be judging fiction, I believe, in the next round, and I'm super excited about it. Thank you again to Robert for putting this all together. The BookTube Prize is such a wonderful project, and I am super thankful to be a part of it, and super grateful to have the BookTube Prize sort of grounding me throughout this year of upheaval. So I hope everybody is doing well and have found some good books to read. I'll talk to you later.